Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract your highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, soul. Listen to their stories, hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's episode wishes to remain anonymous. She lives in Toronto, Canada. She's currently living with the effects of the mandates which has limited her access to public spaces. At the time of recording, non-vaccinated people are still able to purchase food but not much else. She still works, and although it is preferred that the employers at her workplace take the inoculation, the company owners are leaving that decision to the individual. The majority of her colleagues have chosen to go for the jabs and have assumed that she has done the same. During our conversation, we talk about the consequences of saying no, the frustrations of watching friends and family accept the mainstream narrative while knowing it is propaganda, and in turn the attacks that you become subjected to by not doing the right thing. Also, how it feels to witness the growing segregation in society, and we also share our hopes for the future. So as always, I begin by asking my guests, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel you're most her?
Yeah, well, just because of how things have changed so much, I really become happiest with my family, believe it or not. I live in Toronto, and it's a much bigger city than my hometown. So I've made it a point to just break free once a month and go home and spend time, really good time with my family. And we have a new puppy. So he makes me happiest. He's a bit of a handful, but getting away from the big city and just eating and relaxing and rolling around with the dog, that's where I'm happiest. It's a bit too chaotic for where I am now and the challenges. So that's when I feel my best, grounded with my mom and my dad and my brothers.
Good for you. Thank you. Just to get into our conversation, I respect the fact that you, and I want to say thank you on this podcast to you to agree to this conversation for reasons that will become apparent through the conversation. You prefer not to have your name out there, which is totally fine by me. Because what I think is important for people to hear is the experiences that people are having in their different countries, because we might be able to get some sort of feel for what's going on via social media. The mainstream media obviously are putting a picture that serves a narrative that may not, or usually is not, anywhere near to what is actually really happening. And it's important, I think, for us to really understand what it is like for an individual who is in a different country, who is experiencing the same thing, because this pandemonium has been going on worldwide now for over 18 months. And when we all initially thought it might be something that we would just kind of deal with and get back to the normal that we thought we had within a couple of weeks, as we were all promised, here we are now, like I say, over 18 months later, and the screws have gotten a little bit tighter now, much tighter. This is not just about us, or it doesn't seem to be just about health now. What's come forward are these shots. I think we got to keep it that way as well. That we have been mandated to take now, pretty much. And if I kind of look across the world, I can see that in Australia, it just seems to be like Australia, Canada, UK, and US are kind of in order of the way that this thing is being played out. The mandating in the UK has really at this point only been in the healthcare industry at the moment. It hasn't really gone the way of, I would say, the USA and what I understand of Canada and Australia. That's not to say that that's not round the corner. What's also is imminent here is these vaccine passports. And we keep getting dangled the carrot that, no, it's not going to happen. Yeah, it's going to happen. But you only have to do a tiny little bit of digging, and already there are job applications and job notices for people who are going to be on the helpline for these things. They don't get paid very much, by the way, but so we can see that in some way, shape, or form, this is on the horizon for us. So it's really creating a real divide between society and even within households, which is making it so difficult for people to exercise their right to say no, really. And especially if you've done a little bit more investigation into what these shots contain, and then also the effects that they are having on many people who are taking them, and then also the messaging from the mainstream in terms of the efficacy of them, and the fact that you take them but actually they don't really work anyway, but you still have to take them. So there's a lot of confusion and deception around that. There's a lot of separation that's happening. How is it for you? How is it affecting your life? How is it affecting your work? And how are you navigating through it? How do you think you're going to be able to kind of come through however long we think this is going to go for?
Well, in where I'm from in Ontario, Canada, they have pretty much mandated the vaccines for 12 and up, to do anything to participate in any like event or anything what they consider non-essential. So for me, there was a very stressful time. I probably reached out to you in Instagram when this happened, but when they announced the vaccine passports, the government didn't necessarily mandate employees, just for certain industries and certain sectors. So there was obviously a lot of pushback, like our public transportation. They wanted to make it mandatory, and I think they are still pushing them, but the unions, of course, are fighting. Currently, the healthcare industry, they're in court right now. Actually, they've taken the government to court over these mandates, for healthcare and teachers. So apparently, they fought a bill to make it mandatory, but again, like I said, they're in court currently. So small businesses, private businesses, they allowed them to make the choice. So kind of like how the whole like verbiage, they make you feel like it's the right thing to do, that customers won't come to you unless it's fully vaccinated establishment. They also made it like there would be no repercussions. So small businesses, a lot of them did actually jump on it. But there's pushback. Like if someone had to get it because of their job, they want some kind of liability. So the small business owners are kind of, they're struggling with that because, everyone has been out of a job for so long, and now we're all ready to get back to work, and they're putting so many people out of jobs again. So it just doesn't make sense. So how there was a time where it would have been, it was going to be mandated in our where I work, and we were given a time frame. So there's a few of us on staff that were very scared, actually. Obviously, we love our jobs, and we work so hard to get back to this point, and to think that we were either going to be out of a job or we had to be forced to do this. Like, I have one particular coworker who is a dear friend, and we literally planned a date. Like, we were going to plan a date. And we said, we're going together. We will hold each other's hands. We will bawl our eyes out. We stressed like every day. Every day was just so much anxiety. And then our boss ended up choosing not to, because in the industry that we're in, a lot of them actually opted not to mandate their staff. So we still have our choice. We're not sure if that will last. We don't know if eventually we will have to make that choice again. But I'm just not doing anything. I go to work. I'm not allowed to go to restaurants. I can't go to a movie. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to do, which I'm dealing with now. Like, I was never out at restaurants all the time. And as we spoke about before, during COVID, we really learned to cook well and take care of ourselves, and, with lots of vitamins, and like, other than, and not being able to do things and kind of being shunned like that's one of my biggest problem is hearing people talk about, like, if you haven't had the shot, not realizing that you haven't had the shot, and they just assume that you have, and the way they talk about people, like, being selfish, and like, literally they call us idiots and stupid and irresponsible, and those are just traits and characteristics that I feel so far I'm so opposite of that. But again, like, friends, good friends, family, people just feeling so passionate, whether what side you take, it has actually divided so many people. And the biggest thing is that we can't talk. Like, the fact that I'm having this discussion with you, and I can't even be, like, totally open, like that. I do have a problem with that. I feel, I'm thankful that you reached out, and I love to get to know you and what's going on in the UK and around the world, because obviously what the mainstream media is portraying of the UK or everywhere else, they don't really shed too much light on things that we would appreciate. But the fact that, people just can't talk, people that don't have the same opinion are like on total opposite sides, and it's in Canada, it's straight up hatred. Like, our prime minister was very successful and tyrannical. His election was based on protecting vaccinated and allowing vaccinated people to have a free life. And like, some of the things that came out of his mouth was just like, I still can't, I just can't believe. And, as Canadians, we're viewed as, very nice, laid back, polite people. And wow, like, my views of Canadians now, it's so disappointing. Like, it's nothing like, we're not united in any way. It's very obvious divided. And I do have friends that have got the shot that, just did it for their own reasons, and they still have 2 feet on the ground. They're still, very, very supportive. of people that don't get the shot, but it's just not loud enough in numbers. Like I know there's so many of us out there, but the media just seems to focus on the negative. So
out of interest, I'm just wondering what impression you've been given about what's happening in the UK, if anything, if you're getting fed any kind of idea of like what's happening here. It's always interesting to hear what somebody thinks from overseas, you know, because you'll get a version of events.
Yeah, so the way we see the UK, and this is just our perception, is that it isn't as strict. That we thought that maybe your prime minister was not going the passport route. I don't know if that's true. It doesn't seem as strict as in Canada, but again, like that's what I'm seeing from the news. I don't know what is really going on there.
What I'm seeing, because also I don't spend too much time on the news, there's only so much rubbish you can watch, right? But is that even though and I was speaking to a friend about this the other day, we're like, it just feels like the other shoe is about to drop. If you're aware of like the kind of the long-term ideal that they would want for people, there is this kind of feeling that it's like the calm before the storm really comes. We haven't really gone fully into autumn. I mean, this weekend the clocks change, the time changes, so you know, the kind of the light will change, the mood will change as well when you kind of go deeper into autumn. Just the energy changes in as you go into darker nights and shorter days. You just kind of, there's a different mood around. So at the moment it would appear that maybe, and they're kind of hovering this, we're going to have passports, but towards the end of the year. At the moment you're still able to go pretty much anywhere as far as I'm aware. The mask mandate, I mean, we're not in lockdown at the moment. The mandates, I'm trying to think when we got free, there was a free day. I think it was July, or I don't know. It was meant to happen, and we all came out. But the mask mandate, so at the moment there is no mask mandate, really. There's not a heavy one, but this is the way they kind of roll it, because the majority of people still will wear a mask. So you're not mandated, you're not required to wear a mask on public transport or on going into supermarkets or any stores or any public place. However, there's a pretty high percentage of people who still do that, because they've got this very interesting passive-aggressive announcement that will come on periodically when you're on public transport. So I take the buses a lot. So they, you know, I'd say every minute and a half, every 2 minutes, it'll come over. And the first time I heard it, I hadn't heard it for a while, or I'd not heard it like that. And I thought the bus driver had pressed the button, because, you know, they can press their buttons and certain things can. So I was just a little bit, how dare he? Because I came on and like pretty much everyone on the bus had a mask on. And then this announcement came on and saying like, it is required for you to wear a mask when you're on. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, unless you are exempt. But you're helping us anyway, you know. So that's the way it kind of goes on the transport. And then when you're in the supermarkets, it's like, it's not required, but if you want to keep us safe, this is what you will do, you know. So it's kind of this like mind game of like, you don't have to, but if you do, you're helping us and you're being a nice person. If you're not, then clearly you don't care about us. In that same way of, I think it's a very kind of British way, a very passive aggressive underhand way, where you're smiling, but you're kind of like putting the knife in them at the same time. So you're saying like, you know, obviously it's your choice, but if you choose to not do it, then you're not really a nice person. That's kind of the tone of it. And for the majority of people who have a very British demeanor about them, we always want to do, you always want to do the right thing. You always want to be seen to be doing the right thing and not making any waves or anything like that. So you'll just do it to do and go along, get along. And, if you see the way that the majority of people are wearing the masks anyway, you can, they're just doing it so they don't get any hassle. And at the moment, nobody gets any hassle because it's not a mandated thing. I've got a feeling they're going to turn the screws back on that one again, because they had a plan A and a plan B. And I can't even remember what the plan B was, but the plan B was like, we'll get the masks back on and we'll get the lockdowns back in and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, well, plan A might not work, but plan B. So plan B was plan A all along. This kind of like gaslighting, psychopathic, narcissistic, stupid game that is being consistently played, but fallen for by the mass. So, and also they are advertising for telephone customer care stuff for the passport. They're going to need that kind of customer service customer service and that operator or something on the phone anyway. It's not very much money. So they're already advertising for people to fill those roles. So when those come in, I think initially what they'll do is then go for restaurants, bars, cinemas, and pubs. I think, but when you think about British culture, if you kind of really clamp down on the pubs, then you're going to really hurt the Brits. But for the most part, I don't. Those are not the places that I don't frequent places like that, Mm-hmm. So it's not going to directly impact me, and I'm not hurt by the fact they're going to do that. What is more concerning is the rollout and the real push to get younger and younger vaccinated, because now, like you said, over there it's gone down to 5. I think it's just this week it's gone down to 5 as well now. And my concern is in the next few months is, as the weather changes, as people's, if you've done any kind of research into the effects of these vaccinations on the human body, it's diminishing the immune system at a percentage weekly. I think it's going down about 5%. So you're getting to the point where people are ending up with AIDS, like acquired immune deficiency syndrome, basically, because their immune system is shot. And even the Prime Minister himself came out and it's, you can find the clip. He just did it over the past week of saying that, yeah, you get it, but it's not going to stop you getting it. It's not going to stop you transmitting it. So you're seeing, but there's this real cognitive dissonance in terms of people are not fully understanding or seem to have forgotten why you would take something like that in the first place. I mentioned to you earlier, like when I went to India years ago, I had to get shots, and those shots are good for 10 years in my body. Now that I know what I know about shots, I'll think twice about getting any more. But yeah, these ones only have an efficacy of 6 months, and then you have to have these continued boosters, and that's what's being rolled out now, and people are really clamoring for the boosters as well as getting the flu shot on top, not thinking about what it is it's just really concerning to me, because what is also not being reported in truth is the fact that the vast majority of people who are getting tested positive, going through a period of really suffering with this, are the ones who have been jabbed twice. And they move the goalposts in terms of what it means to be fully vaccinated. So even, so for instance, if for any reason I would ever have a vaccination today, if I drop dead tomorrow, you couldn't blame it on the vaccination, because you're not actually vaccinated until 2 weeks later. So you've got this grace period, so they can kind of like allow for, any immediate adverse reactions to go unnoticed, because you've got this 14-day period where apparently it's not in your body It's in some weird kind of like, escrow place, sitting, waiting to then, and then like 14 days later to the hour it drops in and it starts to work. And then and it slowly diminishes over 6 months until you get the next one. And it's affected me in a way that I've been looking for an apartment and just not getting anywhere because and got a rejection solely because of that reason. And it was actually stated back to me. It's like, well, love to have you, but we can't risk you coming here and potentially killing us.
Yeah, it's, for some reason, it is automatically assumed that if anyone brings in the virus, that it would come from an unvaccinated person. But that is not the case. Like, in the same breath that a health minister or your prime minister, whoever, says, yes, you can still get it and you can still transmit it. But like, it's the fact that they just said that and people are like, okay, and, like, yeah, okay, so it'll keep me out of the intensive care unit. That's good. Like, people are looking for things to justify getting the shot, knowing that in 6 months they might have to get another one. Like you said, most vaccinations are good for at least 10 years. So it just boggles my mind that people are still so adamant. Like, you were just told that you are not protected. Like, you can still get it. If you can still get it and you can still transmit it to grandma, that means you're not protected. It's just their justification is, well, if I get it, I won't get it as bad, or I won't end up in intensive care, or I won't die. And then they say, but if you don't have the shot, you could die. Like, all of a sudden I can die. So, since 2020, like, I'm almost convinced that before they announced it, I did come down with the virus. Like, I'm pretty sure I did get it way back then. And I was scared. And, all the crazy videos you saw on Instagram with the bat soup and everything, like, I was actually scared. I was like, oh my gosh, they're letting people into the country. Why aren't they closing the borders? We're going to get it. And then sure enough, 18 months later, you're still trying to deal with this. But with that said, since then, so that was 2019, December, when I think that I'm pretty sure that I got it. Since then, I have not been sick, like, at all. So before this whole new virus, I would always get sick at least twice a year. There was always twice a year, definitely in the autumn when I get really sick, maybe for 2 weeks or whatever. And it was just a thing. But since this virus came about, I have not been sick. And, like, similar to what you have done, invested like so much money. Like, since day one, then I took probably an overdose of vitamin C and vitamin D every day. So, and that has not stopped since. I continue to do that, and I still feel really good. So when they were mandating those shots, I was like, not only does the recovery rate, if you even get it, is like 99, 98% that you recover, why would I be putting something in my body when I haven't even been sick? I can say that I feel like I've been the healthiest over this pandemic than I ever have. So, and I do take the public transit. I take it every day. Mask mandates are still in effect here. So even though I think, so in the province of Ontario, one of the biggest provinces in Canada, the fully vaccinated rate is up to, I think it's close to 83% of all Ontarians are fully vaccinated.
That's high.
Yeah, and 87% have their first shot. So there's the little, under 20% of people that have not gone that route, and they are still hell bent to get everyone. Like, obviously, like you mentioned, goalposts. Like before, they said if we had 70% fully vaccinated, that's enough for herd immunity, and then we can lift restrictions. And then they just kept raising the number. We've actually surpassed that number really fast because we were in lockdown so long and people were out of work or losing their businesses. They became desperate, like dumb and desperate. So they were willing to do anything possible just to get back to opening their businesses, which I understand. I see that. I get that. So yeah, our vaccination rate is very high, but masks are still mandated. Everywhere you go, you have to wear masks. So I guess it's a little different than in the UK, but yeah, we're fully masked all the time, no matter if you've got 2 shots. So that hasn't changed. So I feel like some of the people that did go for the shot are actually starting to scratch their head a bit. Like, wait a minute, I did this because I don't want to wear a mask, and now I still have to wear a mask. Or I did this because I want to travel. And there's still, like, that's a really gray area. The news and the government's telling us we can't travel or what have you, but apparently we can still get on a plane so far, maybe to the US or what have you, but then we have to quarantine or provide a negative test. So it's confusing. Like, we don't know what is allowed exactly, or it's tricky. All I know is that we do have the masking and for example, the travel part. So I have friends that specifically got vaccinated for travel because they didn't want to quarantine and so have you. But now in Canada, if you want to return to Canada, even though you have 2 shots, you have to submit a test, which is an additional $250 Canadian here.
Right, okay.
So when people, like, they're just shocked because they're like, what is this? Like, we thought we were free. We thought we could just, provide a test or what have you. But now there's these expenses that are for people that have got the shot. So there are some people that are like starting to be like,
hang on a minute.
Why did we do this? But that's pretty much how it's working here.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, again, I know friends who've traveled all over, like to Europe, to Africa, countless times actually, without shots, without, they've just done it. They've gone backwards and forwards and multiple times and have been fine. I've just not gone anywhere because there's nowhere that I just want. I'm not in that mood really, and I like traveling, so it's been hard to not go. But there's nowhere that I want to go so badly that I just want to go through the rigmarole and the hassle of what conversations am I going to have sometimes, especially when the mask mandates initially came up. Just going into certain supermarkets or certain stores was just hassle enough to have a conversation with somebody that it was bringing out a side of people that you can see that has always been there, that anyone who's either felt a little bit downtrodden or overlooked in their job suddenly now had an element of power that they could yield on a complete stranger and make their day or break their day, or allow them to do something or not allow them to do something because they had orders from above to do that. So I've seen also how it's really bringing to the surface a real kind of interesting side to people. One is perception of their reality, and it's really showing you people who are who actually kind of question, you know, are cognizant of what is going on and would question, and are, whether they're just out for themselves or whether they're out for the wider community. And by that, I don't mean by pointing people out to be selfish and careless, but actually thinking about what these things will mean in the bigger picture, paying attention to what's being said and then what's not being said and then what's being turned, and these little games that have been played on us. And that has really revealed a lot about people's personal stance, but also the nature of our relationships with each other. You know, you think you know somebody really well, you think you've been friends for X amount of time, and then if push comes to shove, you'll have each other's back. And then yet here we are in like the biggest calamity ever in our lifetimes, I would say, where we're having to make really moral decisions, and the morality of people is being revealed. And sometimes you start to see things in people that you've known and cared about for a long time that you actually don't respect and you don't like. And that in itself is, for me, it's been really revealing. And you try not to be judgmental about why people are taking a certain stance, and realizing that sometimes it comes from a place of fear. For the most part, it comes from a place of fear, because unfortunately the majority of people are like, I don't want to die, you know, I'm scared of dying from this terrible thing. So that in itself kind of comes from, where is your foundation, you know, your spiritual, religious or foundation in life, and what you think life is about, and whether you're scared of dying or whether you think this thing is coming to get you. But what has it shown you about humankind and people and what they're prepared to do, and what has it changed in you, seeing how this is rolled out and what you've learned about the world and people in general?
It's made me very anxious, actually. Like, I was never really, like, I would consider myself, for the most part, pretty laid back, pretty low key. But like how you say you've known people for so long, like, in actuality, one of my best friends that I've had for, gosh, like maybe 12 years, 13 years, we disagree. We disagree on the shot. But like, for them to think that I'm doing this because I'm being selfish and not wanting to, keep businesses open and keep people safe, or keep my parents safe, or whatever. Like, it's like, you've known me for how long? And you're actually thinking this now? I like having conversations. Like, I will be the devil's advocate in a lot of cases. I'm that friend that will actually say things that you don't want to hear, just because I care. And when I do feel something so passionately, it's because I question. Like, if something doesn't sound right or doesn't feel right to me, I will question till the cows come home. I don't understand how people don't even start to question. They just basically listen to what's being out there, the mainstream. And like, even though the facts actually present themselves, they're very selective in what makes them feel comfortable, or how they justify doing what they do, whether it's getting the shot or not. I do have deep fears. Like, I have major allergies. Like, anything that I try, usually I react to. So I even spoke, because I worked in a medical clinic in the past for 5 years, and got close to several doctors, one of which was not really into the Western medicine. Like, he would not get a flu shot, for example. Never. Neither did I. He just didn't believe in it. So, but then there's also other doctors that know that the flu shots are a moneymaker. So, working in that office, I knew like we would get commission. In a nutshell, how many shots, how many flu shots you got out there, the clinic itself would be rewarded, and the physician would be. So that to me was common knowledge. But then when I tried to explain that to friends in comparison to what this shot is about, they dismiss me. They think I'm nuts or something. But I'm like, but wait a second. I actually worked in a medical clinic. I have like proof. Like I actually worked with the pharmaceutical reps. Like I was the one that would schedule the lunch and learns. And so that's basically coming in, booking time with the physicians so they can talk about the latest product. And obviously they would leave those samples. So anybody that didn't have insurance, they could just give them those samples or eventually prescribe those samples from the particular pharmaceutical company. So when I bring these things up, just because I am not on that one side, whatever I say seems illegitimate, or like I'm not trusting the science. Like I am not a doctor. Of course I'm not. But like neither are so many other people. and it's like, well, these doctors are saying this, trust the science. But what about all these other doctors that you guys aren't listening to that aren't in the mainstream media, but for some reason they discredit them as not being real doctors? So anything that we kind of research or that's against the narrative just is either a conspiracy theory or fake news or what have you. And it blows my mind. That affects me the most, is not being listened to, being discredited, and not being able to have like healthy conversations, because it's either you're in or you're out, or you're on that side or not. And because I don't feel comfortable with it, and I'm actually quite afraid of whatever is in that. Like I don't think I would probably be one of those people that would have the adverse side effects. I'm in my late 40s. I know my body. I know how I react to things. And even the physician that I spoke of before, the one that didn't really go for the flu shots, he knows my medical history and the allergies that I have. So penicillin, bee stings, I have an EpiPen, it's anaphylactic, stuff like that. Unfortunately, those types of anaphylactic allergies are not contraindicators to this vaccine. So they warned me that if I did do it, that I would have to do it in a hospital or with a doctor. I couldn't go to one of these random clinics. I don't know if you guys have all these clinics all over the place.
They are everywhere. They're like like stores, theme parks for kids as well. They'll turn up. There's buses. I don't know if you have buses over there as well. So people will set up buses and just drive, and it's one of those things that's so surprising that you can just like hire a bus and paint it and just drive it around. And many of the people who are administering this don't have that much training. Just putting a needle in any part of your body, really, you can mess up. Even if you just pop some air into somebody's, like that in itself, you can mess up and cause people real harm. I think what is really working at this point in time is the psychological effect that they are managing to create with people, and it's forcing people to really find a strength, especially when you want to stand your ground for whatever reasons you have, because you're choosing not to do this. Just psychological isolation, of being derided by nearest and dearest, not being believed, being mocked, all of these things. And if you know anything, or if anybody knows anything about the history of the pharmaceutical industry as it stands, and go back to how this thing began, how the whole pharmaceutical industry began, is that the great names that we all know, great is probably not, just, you know, the usual names that when you start to research different industries that then get taken over and taken over and taken over, invariably there's like a handful of names that always turn up, and you just get bored of, it's like, oh, this crew again, you know. But how the whole industry that now has become called quackery or alternative or unproven industry got taken over by big pharma, that then became this massive sales it's sales and marketing for these pharmaceuticals. And how they came in and just kind of overtook, like threw a lot of money in there, brought their own people in there, and then anyone who was practicing something that wasn't based and linked to pharmaceuticals was then called a quack and called unproven. And just, even like I mentioned to you earlier, I was watching I don't want to say it, so I don't want it to get taken down because it's so good, a documentary about cures for cancer over the past 50, 60 years. And these very natural, simple ways that individuals have cured cancer in people time and time and time again. And just listening back to the way that, you know, they tell that person's story and how they managed to cure people's cancers, and then how the media and then the pharmaceutical industry would then bring in their doctors to then literally character assassinate these people, and then also, you know, kind of laugh them out of existence, and just ruin their lives and ruin their businesses, throw them into jail, because what they were doing didn't really fit in with the way that they wanted to treat things. And when I was listening back to that, I'm just like, this, they could be talking about now, the way that the wording that they use, the way that they're assassinating people's characters because they came in. And again, when you talk about the fact that people aren't thinking, well, why is there so much censorship? Why are we not allowed to hear that other person and maybe think and make, you know, work it out for ourselves? Or why can't you even bring some of these bigger names onto the mainstream and allow them to have their say, so that the public can make a decision, even though, you know, what they would do is just kind of pull them down anyway. But when you start to listen to there's so many people out there that are coming out and just coming up with their research, and these are not just, you know, 2-bit doctors. These are people that have been in the industries, and some of them have actually been in the vaccine industry for 20 and 30 years. So career virologists, people who will stand by and say, you know, I believe in vaccines are good, however, where we're at now is this is not that. Right. And somehow they're not allowed to be heard. And for some reason, people are allowing the choice of their decision making to be made for them, and not being insulted by that. Because surely, if someone was saying to me, actually, this is the person you want to listen to, and I'm like, well, who's that person? Oh, don't worry, you don't need to listen to them. It's an insult on your own intelligence. They're assuming that you're not even bright enough to make a decision. And yes, we're not doctors, but doctors as they stand at the moment, and that's not to take away from, there are doctors that are doing well, you know, they've done good work over the years, and not to fully take away from that, but they're just people who have concentrated and studied and a certain path of information for a certain number of years and come out the other end qualified, and will not veer from that. Because ultimately, when you go to the majority of doctors, you'll tell them something and you'll get a prescription for a pharmaceutical. And from my own personal background, not me personally, but within my family, having seen what consistent taking of pharmaceuticals will do to your body, over the years, and how it will actually break you down and ultimately turn you into an addict and kill you, is one of the main reasons why I've got real umbrage with it. I struggle to take painkillers, and I'll be, if ever I'm out at work or anything like that, and it's like I've got like cramps, or I've got a crazy headache, and someone will be like, do you want a tablet? I will sooner not, just because I just don't want to go near any of those things, because I just have a real mistrust of just grabbing them for no reason. I think that industry, obviously it makes billions, but it's always treating the end result. It's just trying to kind of like put a band-aid over the effect, instead of really going down to the root cause of what is creating that in the first place, which is what this alternative, unfortunately we have to call it that, medicine does. Is it will go to the root of why you have those symptoms and actually work from that level upwards, as opposed to just kind of putting a plaster on symptoms, or just pushing things to putting them to one side a bit. It's like, if it was a car, you wouldn't just put a band-aid on an empty sign. If you've got an alarm going off, you'd be like, I need to fill the tank somehow. And it's with us not understanding what our bodies are about, and how we've been poisoned over the years by these things, not just by ingesting it, but also in our belief system, in certain people, in the fact that somebody wears a coat and has something, doctor or PhD before their names, that they would know more than you. They may be able to help you, but ultimately you do have an idea of your body.
Absolutely.
You do have an idea. You know how you feel. You don't have to completely outsource that. And I think they've taken advantage of the fact that they've separated people from that just cognition of their own self, to then go to the doctor and let him or her tell you what is right or wrong with you, and then let them sort it out for you with all of these things that are ultimately a poison, and a slow poison at that.
Yeah, I find doctors aren't actually always right, and a lot of the times they're just taking a shot in the dark. So in Canada, we have free healthcare. In the UK, do you as well?
NHS.
Yeah. So the healthcare system has always been, overrun, underfunded, and because Canadians don't have to pay for a lot of it, we just assume that that's great. We're good as long as we don't have to pay. But in actuality, again, because I was working in that clinic, and I could see firsthand how things like slip through the cracks, or misdiagnosis. I learned that you have to be very proactive and take a lot of initiative on your own healthcare, on your own body, like you say. My mother, for example, she's had breast cancer several times, luckily surviving, but at the same time, the medications, like they are destroying her. And it's like, I'm not comfortable with what her doctor does and says. And if we lived closer, if my mom and I lived closer, I would definitely be with her more in asking the questions, because again, I am that person that asks questions all the time. Something doesn't seem right, or don't take everything at face value. Don't believe what that doctor is saying, because for the most part, the doctor is giving you like 5 minutes of his time.
Right.
That's it. Like, you're in and out. And as far as pharma, they are bullies. Like, it's the biggest bullies corporation that exists. Like, not only do they fund their own research studies and the FDA and everything, like they kind of are in cahoots or what have you. They actually fund our mainstream media as well. Like, they are actually the major funders of a lot of our big mainstream media. So that itself, like, you should shake your head, but again, nobody does. Like, everyone just follows what they hear and feels safe about that. But meanwhile, some of these big pharma, I won't mention names specifically, but they're constantly doing recalls of their own products. Like,
Right.
and if you actually go deeper, there's a lot of lawsuits involved and everything else. But because they've got big money, they can deal with that.
It's a lost leader, isn't it? Really, it's just like, oh well, no. What was the payout this year? Just a few billion. Okay, that's all right. We'll recoup. And it doesn't
absolutely.
It doesn't seem to be an issue. If we had a little bit more understanding of how our bodies work and what kept us well, we may not have such a huge uptake in something like this. Where, you know, and if we understood what bacteria and viruses and what they were really about, there wouldn't be this massive fear that something is just going to come and like jump out at us just because someone is like within 6 feet of you in the supermarket. No, that just and that is something that I find really concerning, and it's hard to speak about it to people, especially parents. Because they'll be like, well, you don't have children. I'm like, no, I don't. But I understand psychological programming and those precious first 6-7 years of life. And when you're seeing these children, just one, even if it's not within their own family, but just seeing the world go crazy, you know, and no one really catering to the fears that they're having. And then on top of that, you know, seeing small ones having masks, it's like, this is a long-term thing that however this unfolds and when it comes to some sort of equilibrium, whatever that might be, how we deal with the aftermath of that. What are your thoughts about where this is going and how to start to manage it in a way that we can be stronger and we don't feel so marginalized? I like to ask questions, but I don't want to get into a fight with people all the time. But when you're ignoring facts, when you're ignoring reality for the sake of, I don't even know, I always like to try and hear where people are coming from in terms of, you know, like, okay, how did you get to that conclusion? And as I said, I've been looking for apartments and speaking to people that have when I questioned one woman who'd had the first shot that she had, that she was out for a couple of weeks, even worse than when she had COVID for a couple of days. But then when I was saying, well, you know, I just think it's a bit quick that, you know, I didn't go into the full thing. I was like, well, don't you think it's a bit quick that this has come out? And, you know, it seems a bit like a money grab to me, you know, just kind of just light questions. But the questioning were like, someone said to me, they didn't think that the company was making any money. I had to try and stop my whole chin from falling on the ground going, honestly, and this is not a stupid person, but their reasoning and their understanding was like, well, no, they're not making any money out of this. This is like a humanitarian thing. And you're just like, okay. And another was, I'm like saying, well, my reasons behind it are because of my experience of pharmaceuticals within the family, but also historically within the community of like Tuskegee. It was one of the big experiments that was done on the Black community. And it just shows that things cannot always be as they're seen. There's been countless other experiments that have been done. I was just like, there's not been enough testing, and, you know, technically it's still in trials, but they're like, well, you know, so much research has been done beforehand that's the reason that it was able to come. And speaking to me in a absolutely adamant that is the case.
Yeah, I've heard the exact same thing by many people. No, they're not making money. This is what they do. This is like for the better of humankind, like, and the government not making money because, again, because healthcare is free and we don't have to pay for these vaccines. For some reason, they're thinking they're not making money. And I'm like, the fact that Canada is one of the highest vaccinated countries in the world right now. I don't know if we're like in the top three, but there is no doubt in my mind that our prime minister did that for a reason. Like, absolutely. And like they don't see the connection between governments and big pharma. There is billions of dollars being made here. That's not a hidden fact. But again, I just feel like people are very selective in what they hear, what they want to hear, what they want to believe. But like, big pharma is big pharma. That means big money. Like, and yeah, like I've heard the exact same thing. Like, they just don't think it's like, when I say cash grab, it's like, what do you mean cash grab? You know, like, and again, like made to feel like stupid or someone that just wants to go against the grain. How many times have I said to people, it is a lot harder to stand your ground and to not just like throw up your hands and be like, okay, I'm in. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much harder to stay real than just to go along with it. So I wouldn't be expressing my views or my beliefs just for sake of trying to make people angry or just cause a fight or anything. But it astounds me, like, how people, they just don't see it. So, and I think that time, with our country in particular, time was essential. Like, the way they drew out things, they literally stole people's souls. Like, I feel like they literally took people's souls, left them like with these empty carcasses, just gasping for air. And a lot of the decisions were made out of like just desperation. You know, like, if you do that long enough to people, they will bow down. Like, if you give them no other option. And it's the same thing with the boosters. So I guess Israel was one of the the leaders in all this, as far as shots. And, you know, they're already on their third, and to be considered fully protected in Israel, you have to have at least 3 shots now, because they've acknowledged that the 2 shots wore off. So they're admitting this and they're onto the boosters, but then people here in Canada are like, they all of a sudden are not seeing what Israel is saying or producing. Like, in the beginning, they were the first to be vaccinated, and they were the first to start partying again and living their lives. So, you know, everybody was like, oh, well, look at how well Israel's doing. And then as soon as it started to like go downhill again, and then them noticing cases going up and then having to introduce that booster, then all of a sudden they're like not referring to Israel anymore. So when people would ask, like during their question periods for the health ministers or whatever that are on the news every day, the question periods, they asked them about the boosters. In the past, they would ask them, and they're like, oh, no, there's no need for that. There's not enough data to support that. And yeah, we don't think we're going to be going that route. But then months later, the same person will be like, yeah, so we can see that, you know, your production is waning, and third boosters would be good for the more vulnerable and what have you. Like, it's time, like just dragging things out to making you completely weak and subservient, and then not even realizing what you're agreeing to. Like, you know, people's views are changing left and right, but I feel like it's again to justify their beliefs or their decisions, and or what's convenient for them. So whereas for me, not doing this is not convenient. Like, not bowing down is far from convenient, you know. So that's why, I gravitate to people like yourself. Like, I'm having more conversations with you than some of my own friends because we're not agreeing. And again, I'm bringing it back to divide, and it's just like, it's mind-boggling. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm hoping that we'll get out of this sooner than later. Again, there's like so many people fighting against it. But I think you had mentioned that there was like hotlines set up or whatever for potential maybe lockdowns. And when the government announced the ending of the official CERB, that's what we called our assistance throughout the pandemic, they called it to an official end, but they said that they will still have a program in place for any particular industry that does go into lockdown. So they're saying that we're not, because we have high vaccination rates. So even if our numbers go up, they're not so concerned because the symptoms and the severity won't be as bad. There won't be as many deaths. There won't be as many ICU people. But it's the carrot. So again, for them to open up to full capacity right before the fall winter season, when everybody goes back indoors, like, as much as I disagree and shake my head with a lot of things that go on, like, I can even see, like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you're opening up 100%, but we're going into that season where everybody gets sick, regardless of if it's a flu or not. So, it just depends on who you talk to or who you listen to. But at this point, I couldn't even really give you an honest opinion as to where I think we're going to be in the next couple months. Like, I want to say that we're fighting through, but the way that they've handled it in the past, like, you expect me to be confident? Like, I, as not taking the shot, feel like there is going to be a lockdown, more so than the people that have taken the shot, who are so-called living their life again. Like, they are going out doing what they want. They're making money. They're spending money. So I feel like they have a little bit of like a false sense of safety, security. But yeah, like, they don't see it. They're like, oh no, we're doing good. We're like ahead of the game. We're like, socializing again. Everything seems pretty good. We won't die. We won't be in the ICU, even if we do get it. So they're a lot more optimistic than I am. So that in itself concerns me. Like, that scares me, because the last thing I want to do is go into another lockdown. But I wouldn't put it past. Like, I definitely, I always say, don't hold your breath. So,
exactly. If we don't, in one shape or form, over the course of these winter months, and particularly around Christmas in the UK, I will be surprised, pleasantly surprised actually, but I will be like hugely surprised if that doesn't happen, or some form of screw tightening doesn't happen, or at least if the mandates don't get pushed hard again, or it's like I said, it's just too calm at the moment.
Yeah, it's a little eerie.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too calm. I suppose it's like Halloween weekend, isn't it? It's just a little bit too calm. It's just a little bit too normalish. But it's one of those things that, because I research on this for Great Awakening Report, and every week when we're doing the section that's on health, that is on about COVID, there is so much information out there. There's so much, it's to the point where, like, if something was coming to an end in any kind of news cycle, or any, if the story was ending, if it was over, there would be a tapering off of information. It would just kind of, after a while, you wouldn't really be able to find anything that relates to it. With this, the opposite is true. There is like
No.
more and more and more information coming out. And of course, it's astounding because I don't just sit in front of the box or the radio and listen to what the mainstream's telling me. So it just feels like all that people are being told is like cases are going up, cases are going up, cases are going up, which are basically the efficacy of the jabs going down, or people with diminished immune systems are now getting versions of whatever they're calling it this week. Somehow they managed to play whack-a-mole with these facts that the deaths are going up. And there are more and more unexpected deaths, sudden death, or breakthrough, or these are the terms that they are using to talk about these people that are, you know, dying for strange reasons. And every now and again, they will attribute to that someone had COVID, even though they were fully jabbed. So they're leaking this out. So I'm just wondering which way the game is being played in order to do that, while you're speaking about this. And you're allowing that, because surely you just want it to be some like rampant anti-vaxxer who got sick and it serves them right, because at least they're not a danger to the rest of us good people. So where I am with this is, it's not over. Unfortunately, it's not over as much as I would like it to be. Just looking at the way things are, and just this kind of impending. And it's not that I wake up every day just going, oh my God, things are terrible. I'm like, just by clearly looking at the information that you can see, it's like, this cannot be over yet, because it's having a detrimental effect on more and more people who've taken it. And as we go into winter, then, you know, that's when we'll be more and more aware of what that is. And I think we just, from my point of view, is prepare to see something that we've never witnessed before in terms of the fallout of this, whether that means that we have extreme death rates, or whether long-term sicknesses, infertility. And then on top of that, when you kind of pull back and really find out what these shots are about, and then really understand where this is trying to push society into, that in itself is mind-blowing. Loads of information, you know, and it sounds so preposterous, it sounds like science fiction, it sounds so untrue, but there are people who have been out there that have been speaking for 5, 10, 15 years, ones that I can find, about this, the exact thing that is happening now, and spoke about it. Some of them got taken out because obviously they were speaking like, you know, way ahead and way out of turn. But exactly what they're saying is, if you create a crisis, and, you know, the creation of that we can look at in different ways, then you come up and you offer the solution to that. The solution to that then can actually steer people the way that you wanted to, because you wanted to make a shift in society, you wanted a result to go in a certain direction. So you have to get people actually clamoring for the solution, begging for the solution. And that's what we're seeing now. When you really look into it and realizing this is nothing new, this is just a plan that has been put into action in the last couple of years. And whether we can kind of stand up and put the brakes on it and rise up out of it. Look at, if you want to dig into it, like you say, you just need to see where the money's going or who's benefiting from it, and then what the ultimate aim is as a result of all that's happening. It becomes very clear, sometimes too clear really, but it makes it from one standpoint easier to say no, but then frustrating. I think frustration would be my most common emotion nowadays.
Yes.
It's just,
oh my God,
is more than anything. It's not even anger, it's just frustration. Again, if I have conversations with friends, what we're saying is, like, how can people not see it? And I have to say, well, they're not seeing it because they are not privy to the information that we're looking at. And when you don't have that information, and when you don't start to connect the dots and see how it all plays in, all that you're thinking about is you're going to kill me if you come near me. That, you know, it's that short-sighted. But when you really actually look at the bigger picture and the bigger direction of where this is potentially going to go, it's not just solely about health. It's not just about passports. It's about ruining economies and livelihoods and getting people to be in a certain bracket and box. And it may happen, the trapdoor might come down at the last minute before people really wake up at the last minute going, everything that people were trying to warn us about is here.
Well, you and I are both in sales or like have done sales. So I feel like we have a little bit of insight there too. Like the way you present things, the way you verbalize things, the way you time things, even in your intonation, like it's so because I have that background, and also in school I studied film and marketing and the actual like subliminal messaging,
right?
That because I was so interested and intrigued and learned, I just kind of assumed that other people would know this, but people have no idea what they're looking at when they turn on the TV. Like it is not what is like, it's so, I don't know, I can go on, but I won't. But it's amazing the tactics, the effects, everything that they use on TV. And again, the fact that Big Pharma actually funds these television stations, like in actuality. So I'm with you about the frustration. Like I get so frustrated that people don't see it the way we do, but then I have to remind myself that, you know, we are privy to some things that people have no idea. Like they would never even think, like in their daily lives, they've never had to. So it's like there's this documentary on HBO that I'm dying to sit down with my best friend to like just sit down and let's watch this. But I don't think he would. Like I actually don't think he would, because he's so sick of me trying to explain things that how I feel that doesn't seem to help him. You know what I mean? So it's frustrating. It's like we have so much information that people just don't want to even entertain. But yeah, like it's even the facts, like the adverse effects and the deaths related to shots, like they have no idea. Like they're like, oh yeah, that's like, it's very rare, or it's like 1 in a million or whatever. And there was a particular shot, a particular company that got to Canada first, and they were like rolling them out like crazy. And then of course there was the issues with blood clotting and such. And they were still told, oh no, everything is safe. It was, I specifically remember the number. It was 1 in a million for this particular company. And then sure enough, within a month, it was 1 in 100,000. So that to me is a pretty big jump. Like people still fail to recognize, like, what if that 1 in 10,000 is you or your mom? It's still a person in, and it's underreported, and they have no interest in trying to find these things out. So they just believe that what's presented, and that's the most frustrating thing. So I don't know, like I feel like even because our case numbers are so low, everybody's like, oh, because it's working, it's working. And the low case numbers could be that, you know, people are actually taking care of themselves better, or they're not running to the nearest testing station for like a sniffle, because, you know, like the fear mongering, like all of a sudden you feel a little off, people are running out to get tested because they don't want to have it. They don't want to bring it to their workplace, to their home or whatever. So like a lot more people aren't being tested. So like there's all these contributing factors that make it what it is. But the thing that scares me, that breaks my heart the most, is the fact that if something does go wrong, they have the unvaccinated to blame. So what the shots are working, but as soon as something goes south, it's because of those people that chose not to do it. It's their fault. There's a scapegoat. So,
which is a shame, because if you kind of just remind yourself of what the purpose of a vaccine is, it shouldn't matter. Like, if you've taken it, you should be able to go and stand in a room of 10,000 unwashed people and be fine.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really, somehow the twist in definition. I've just heard so many things of people who've had it, and I've been like, well, aren't you supposed to not get it now that you've had it? Yeah, but I didn't have it as bad.
Yeah.
And so it's a stellar job. It's a stellar mind control job, but I'm just, we're bored of watching this, and we just want to see it through. But I think in order to truly see it through, we have to go through the part of really learning, like, hard lessons, hard learned. And I think there are some people that just won't come out of this trance that they're in, because that's what it is. They never will. Some people, they might have a jolt if it comes to their doorstep. And even with people that I know who've had it come to their doorstep, or adverse reactions on their doorstep, still will explain it away. And I'm hearing more and more anecdotal stories of deaths, palsies, cancer, blood clots, heart issues, weird bleeding, just within my group, just having a kind of connection with people, and yet no one's putting the things together. It's just like, oh well, look at that.
Is it because it didn't directly happen to you? And there comes to a point where I question, like, if something did in fact happen to them or one of their someone close to them, and they had gotten the shots, I feel like some of them would still like, you know what I mean? Like still.
I've seen it. I'm agreeing with you. I've seen it where people have been like, but so and so died. It's like, well, it's because of that. No, it isn't. And I don't know if it's either you don't want to believe it, or if you've been holding on to this story that it's not that, and then it comes to the point where you have to admit it. All of the conspiracies have come true, and it's actually landed on your doorstep within your circle, where you just can't deny it anymore. When it comes to that point of admitting that there is something going on, your entire life is going to crumble. And the people that are holding on so fast to this being the way that it's being presented to them are, lovingly weaker-minded people. They need external validation. They need to be part of the crowd. They would sooner say yes than no, even though they know that no is the right answer. They'll just say yes to not be the one that sticks out. And that is ultimately a compliant, weak-minded person. And that's the majority of society. Because like you said, you don't just say no for the sake of saying no, knowing that it's going to cause you so much hassle on a day-to-day basis. It's because you staunchly agree with it, and you've got the strength of character to stand up for what you believe in the face of everything. And it's hard. It's a psychological battle that you have to really, like, every day, like, gear yourself up for, and get over the times that you're despondent and pissed off and frustrated and all of the things that come with it, and pick yourself up again and face to the fact that if you open your mouth and say that you've not done it, that immediately people are going to think that you're selfish and uncaring, and all these, all of the words that they've been told to throw at you. For the majority of people who are weak-minded and compliant, they wouldn't be able to stand up to that kind of attack.
No, you're absolutely right.
So we have to congratulate ourselves on a warrior mindset to, especially when the realization hits and people come to terms with the fact that they've been lied to on a level that's unbelievable. So we have to congratulate ourselves on our strength and, like you say, reach out to each other and have conversations and just share and just, and just kind of let out and just, oh my God, I had a conversation with so-and-so and they're saying this, and like laugh and try and laugh through it, because otherwise it will send you crazy like the rest of them.
Yeah. I've been there. Like, it was like at times it'd be like, you're treading that fine line because of as you say, the warrior mindset. It's not easy. And I'm not anti-vaccination. I am not that. It's just to be grouped in that one particular group, like, just because you don't agree with something, it's offensive. Like, I have literally said to some friends, I am offended. I am offended that you think that way of me, because like these how they kind of have their like events, their shot events, like bring the community out and serve ice cream and hot dogs and hamburgers and blah blah blah. Like, usually I would be that person that would be volunteering in these community events. Like, I totally believe in helping people. I've always been in the industry to help people and support people. To be looked at as someone that's just like, even just immature, like a spoiled brat. Like, that's so far from my character, just because I'm not on that other side. So it's sad that that division, that is like the whole shot forcing, mandating passports, like that infuriates me like beyond words. But my biggest deep down is the division, like the division of people, of our country, of our neighbors, friends and family. I think when it comes down to it, I think that's where my biggest problem is. It's the division and what it's done to people's minds, like the fear mongering, the brainwashing. Like, have you ever heard of a movie called Wag the Dog? And I believe it was Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal. I think they were the stars of it. And Wag the Dog, I don't know, is that a British term or no? Wag the Dog.
I don't think
because
I don't think it is, but I'm thinking just like, sorry, George Michael had a song called Wag the Dog. I don't know if that means it. I don't know if that's because it's a British term, but I never watched the film, but I'm aware of the title.
Yeah, so Wag the Dog, like, you know how dogs wag their tail. I believe the term wag the dog is like you're basically taking the dog by its tail and you're wagging the dog. And from what I remember, it had to do with politicians and having to distract, because of course they were in some kind of scandal or whatever. So what they would do is kind of orchestrate like a war. So, and it has happened in real time where presidents have created wars that didn't need to happen just to deflect your attention to something else. So that's what I keep thinking of too with this whole pandemic, how politicians are manipulating everyone to believe a certain thing. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying that this virus doesn't exist. I absolutely, and like I said, I feel like I've had it, and it wasn't pleasant. It was not pleasant, but I survived. And from that time, I got uber healthy. Like, from what I took then, I continued to take it. So I think that I'm not discrediting that it's not a thing. It absolutely is a virus, just like there are many viruses, just like there the flu hits us every year and bad. But I feel like there's other ways of navigating, and I feel like there's other ways of dealing with it. I hope that we get to that point sometime, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe if ever you get it time, you should check out the movie.
Oh, I
Just for
keep
fun of
hearing
gold.
so much about it. So at some point, it's got to be on the list, doesn't it? But I think, I think there are changes being made, or action being taken with regards to this. There are organizations that I've recently come across in the UK. One of the things that it does on their website is it's a downloadable PDF which has all the protocols, much of it's supplemental, for treating COVID, should you have it, So it's not about going into hospitals and getting incubated and, that protocol, which is a completely, well, I'll just leave that there. But
yeah,
because that's another story that doesn't have a happy ending. But like you say, that, so, they're acknowledging that it is a thing and people do get it, and there are ways to deal with it that can be treated. Like with anything, that you have something and you just you bring something into the fore. You say this is happening and this is happening on this massive level, but then you also need to create evidence of it happening to an extent of you need to have some numbers. And the numbers got inflated in a way that is going to be hard for people to really accept, when the truth and the reality of how those numbers were created, especially in the beginning, happened, because that happened a lot in the UK, and I know in certain areas in the US as well. The numbers were created. I'm trying to say this in the most pleasant way. Also, another organisation that I've found that are called the BIRD, so the British Ivermectin Research Development, or something like that as well. So they're very much about because people knew that ivermectin's been on the market for years and years, and then suddenly you're like, oh, it's terrible, it's actually something for horses, and just kind of pushing it. This is like, no, it's been going for a while. And I have my stash as well. Just you've got to kind of like have a working cabinet, like you did when I grew up. It's like you had a working cabinet, a medicine cabinet with like natural stuff, all the stuff that I used to take. I've pretty much got it here now. There are organizations that are setting themselves up, and also setting themselves up to look professional, because I think one of the things that is very difficult for somebody who's plugged into mainstream media is they have the budget to do the flash bang shiny stuff, and then when they go and look at a website of someone that's more independent, because it doesn't whiz and bang like that one, you're going to discredit this one because that one with all the propaganda on just looks like slicker, and that one is someone a little bit more homemade and everything like that. But they're working with that, and just other organizations that are starting to bring things to legal action, the areas that I want to get involved in, because I just feel I need to do something. Because just this sitting here, and it's all well and good having a podcast and doing other podcasts and reporting, but also I just feel like I need to keep doing, and also I need to keep learning about this, so that I'm informed, so that I'm able to then be able to have a conversation as best as you can have a conversation with any pushback of people that are going, well, this, like, but the information is here. I've got links galore if you want to kind of direct anyone to, where they're at in their awareness. I can say, okay, start here and have a look at that and see how that opens the picture. There are many people that are already preparing to move this in a different direction. It's just, we've got to hold the line, as they say, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Like, just keep holding on. Like, I do see there is an end. There is an end. I just don't know how far, how close, or how long it'll be. And I often like envision the future, like how we look back on this in history,
Right.
and what gets exposed. And then at that time, do people like, wow, I was fooled, or you know what I mean? Or wow, that actually happened. But yeah, like when you're in it, it's hard to see that outside perspective. Yeah.
Well, I'll leave it there for the moment, but I just want to say thank you for coming and speaking, and it'd be useful for people just to listen and hear somebody else's perspective, hear what it's like to be in another country and what they're experiencing. And I'm going to start reaching out around the world and just getting other voices from other countries so that they can say what it is they're experiencing, so that people can just hear what it's like to be just a member of society trying to work out how they can move their life through what is going on and how it's affecting them, and how, what they see they can do and how it's going to affect their future. So I don't know if you've got any closing words to say.
Just I appreciate you, and I appreciate the opportunity. I do think it's important, and like I said, it's unfortunate that I can't be so open and share all this conversations in my position, but that's why it was really important for me to have this opportunity with you. And I think you should definitely reach out to other countries, and I'll definitely tune in to listen to what other people say. Just cherish the people that you have that support you, and don't give up.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Her Conversations. And you can find out more about me on my website. So that's carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. On Facebook under Carol May Whittick, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram under Kazmick, Cazmick. Have a great week and see you in the next episode. Thank you.